Besides, I thought I'd finished everything you needed me to do."
"You did, but it's nearly Christmas, Amos. I could have found a few other things for you. It's not a great time to be without a place to go."
He dipped his head slightly in acknowledgement of her concern. "But when I get where I'm going, I'll be someplace, won't I?" He squinted up at her through the sun. "Anyhow, I think it was time for me to move on." Freya blushed slightly.
"Gareth was okay with you being around, really he was. He just, well, he likes things to be ordinary."
"And I offended his sensibilities. I understand that."
"I don't think he understood you, that's all. The choices you've made."
She was trying to be tactful, knowing full well that Amos had heard at least one sarcastic comment that Gareth had made at his expense. Judging by the look on his face, however, he understood Gareth's motives very clearly, and really, Freya was in no position to argue. She had wanted to help, that was all, but she could also see it from her boyfriend's point of view. Maybe Amos's leaving was for the best.
"So, where are you headed to now, then?"
Amos surveyed the road ahead, his tight black curls gleaming in the sunshine. "This way will do."
"And when you get to the end of this way, where next?"
"Well, no, see, that's the best bit. I'll just go the way the wind blows me." Freya drummed her fingers on the steering wheel.
"There's a fair wind howling down the A49 today, I reckon. Have you ever been to the Mistletoe Fair?"
"Not that I can recall."
"Well, seeing as you helped me to harvest it all, do you want to see what happens next?"
Amos looked at his watch, as though he had some pressing engagement. "You might need some help, then."
"I might, and I'll buy you lunch and a pint when it's over."
She leaned over to open the passenger door as Amos shrugged his rucksack off his shoulders. He climbed in, wedging his belongings on the floor of the cab, before taking a deep breath and inhaling the smell of the greenery from within. "Magical stuff, mistletoe," said Amos, "but I expect you know that. I've always thought it a rather wonderful coincidence that it appears at Christmas. It seems exactly the right time of year for a miracle or two, don't you think?" Talk about cutting it fine, thought Amos. A few moments later, and she might have missed him altogether, and then where would he be? Sometimes he knew the minute he ended up in a place why he was there, and sometimes it took a while longer. This time had been the hardest of them all to call. He'd been in Much Marlowe's since the beginning of August, and the jobs that took him there had both been straightforward. 2 beautiful cottages rethatched, but no hint of any reason for him to stay. Ordinary families, settled lives, and not the slightest prickling feeling that usually alerted him to his purpose. It wasn't until he pitched up at the Sherbourne orchard that he began to feel he might be onto something, although at the time he had wondered whether it was the after-effects of too much cider the night before. A drunken bet in a game of cards had cost him his van, and the only reason he had turned up Freya's drive was the hope of quenching a raging thirst. As he walked its length, however, it occurred to him that the apple harvest might be his salvation, and when Freya opened the door, a wave of dizziness had passed over him so strong it had nearly taken him off his feet. He knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, that he would stay. Several glasses of water later and 2 hours' sleep had allowed him to recover, and by then Freya had already decided to offer him some work. She couldn't afford to pay him much, but he had food, a place to stay, and the weeks had slipped by. By the middle of October, however, he was none the wiser. Freya's boyfriend, Gareth, was a prize pillock, but harmless enough, and although their relationship had clearly lost its sparkle, if it had ever had any, they rubbed along peaceably enough. There seemed no real reason for him to be there after all, and so helping her harvest the holly and mistletoe had been his final job. He must simply have been mistaken, and it was time for him to move on once more. He knew it was her, though, the minute he heard the van slow down, and now, as he sat in the warmth beside her, he found he was rubbing the back of his neck repeatedly to calm the prickling sensation he felt there. She had crossed his path again, and he wasn't sure what the mistletoe fair had to do with things, but there was no doubt in his